from the Psych Hub Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Morrison.
And this is Patrick Kennedy.
And you are listening to the Psych Hub Podcast, The Future of Mental Health. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the show. We have a really interesting guest that I know I'm very excited about, and I am optimistic we're all going to learn a lot from Jan Bruce. You know, just being a female who co-founded Psych Hub with Patrick, we all got presented with a number of different challenges. The whole world did, right? Overnight. All of a sudden, we went from working at home to having to go remote, have to figure out how to be productive at work, but also take care of the well-being of employees. And, all of this is kind of on the heels of such great work that meQuilibrium does and has done and continues to do. So I know as someone who runs a business, I'm excited to learn, but also as someone who's in this space with you, I'm excited to have our listeners learn.
As we know, Jan, you've been a trusted advocate and authority on women's attitudes towards balanced, healthy lifestyles and sustainable living, something, Marjorie, I think that maybe you could benefit from given the hectic pace as a CEO who's trying to do an amazing startup, which you're doing great, but I know it's come at quite a personal sacrifice. So just another thank you, Marjorie, for all you're doing to make Psych Hub a success. But back to you, Jan. So Jan's the CEO and co-founder of meQuilibrium, the first holistic cognitive platform built for organizations as they navigate the need for more innovative and agile workforces and integrated HR strategies that support overall well-being for their employees. The company's digital and interactive programs help workers and companies achieve measurable results in well-being and performance by enabling leaders to predict problems and prescribe personalized solutions at a global scale. I mean, I guess the layperson's description of that, Jan, you correct me, is that you are the one who's kind of taking the mental health temperature of a workplace so that you can help the C-suite better respond to the needs of the workers.
Yeah, so we definitely take the temperature and then we help adjust it based on what we see in the data. The climate around stress, burnout, mental health, agility and mindset are very much the indicators, the leading indicators today of whether the company's going to be able to perform and pull off their goals. So that's really where, we start, and that's where we do our work.
Tell us a little bit, Jan, about your interest in this space and how you came to co-found this company.
Sure. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a software engineer either. After years holding down, big jobs in media companies, I became an entrepreneur because I was doing turnarounds of media properties. I would be, taking over distressed properties, repackaging them, repositioning them, building them up, and then selling them. Often, a lot of times they were sort of special interest publications or websites. But about 20 years ago now, I took over a very old holistic health media company that had phenomenally great content. It had books and CDs and a website and a magazine. And it was really a powerhouse in the fields of mind-body medicine, holistic health, behavior change, positive psychology. I became a subject matter expert, but more than that, I said, oh my gosh, we have to turn this from being kind of very academic and not accessible or ideological to being practical, and every person needs this. I became a subject matter expert in mind-body medicine, and I started to realize, by the way, I sold that company to Martha Stewart.
Oh,
and
wow.
I ended up working for Martha for like 5 years as one of her executives. Wow. And, but in that time, working for a major national omni-media company, what I mean is, web, TV, print, magazines, all of this stuff, I started to realize that, stress and toxic cultures. And also, no matter how smart, how successful, people are, if they don't have the basic preventive skills to keep themselves on track, to keep themselves well and keep their mindset positive and agile, then life is becoming increasingly tough. And the more I started to look at, on a journey of what's going on in corporate America and also culturally, I started to see that the changes in the way we live, a lot of it is technology, but a lot of it is cultural. People are getting burned out and stressed out and checked out. It led me to start this company. When you first talked about meQuilibrium, Marjorie, I'll just get this all out here, Patrick, but the genesis of this is that I saw in the science of resilience, which I would describe as, resilience is the ability to thrive amidst adversity. I saw in that a model for helping people learn to be at their best and self-correct. And I called the company meQuilibrium, and I call it MEQ all the time. Like, you've got your IQ and your EQ and now your MEQ, because, it's not about a destination. It's not like you get whole, you learn something, and then you're done. It's like equilibrium. You keep on having to balance and rebalance and find your way. And that's what we try to do for people. Amazing. And for companies. So meQuilibrium, thrive in adversity and be resilient.
I am obviously a huge believer in cognitive behavioral therapy. I attend 12-step meetings daily basis. I connect with my peer group. That helps me gain insight that reading a book or doing a meditation doesn't. It's really connecting with people level sets me and keeps me out of my head. But how do you connect people in terms, because it's very hard. We're finding it at PsychHub too. Engagement is the key. How do people focus on improving their own mental and emotional, spiritual well-being?
The first thing that is so important is awareness. I'll tell you a personal story about why I got so excited about resilience. When I first started to study this, I was talking to someone, a coach, about thinking styles and your way of interpreting what's going on around you. And I started to understand that there were things in my own read of the situation around me and my reactions that was actually making my problems worse. And I'll give you an example of this. As a business person, I had a very strong belief that I needed to be there for everyone. I needed to be at every sales meeting, and I needed to be at every manager meeting. And that was a big part of my self-identity.
Oh boy. But I'm interrupting you for 1 second, Jan, because Patrick's going to say, Marjorie, listen, pay attention. Okay, continue.
Right. We've all been there. And why is it that women do that, right? I felt, like I'm not the greatest salesperson, and I'm not, it's like I've got phenomenal sales leaders, especially, in my company before this, but I was like, if I'm not there, I'm letting them down. Okay. And then as a mother, I felt I had to be at like every orthodontist appointment, every soccer game. And what invariably happened, my life as a very successful corporate, media executive was a string of, leaving. People were waiting on the corner for me. Sales meetings were starting 10 minutes late because they were waiting for me to show up. And the mindset around my role in all of this was really making me crazy and slowing everyone else down. And suddenly it all unpacked for me how much it was all about my approach to these things and coming up with workarounds to be successful that either let me prioritize or let go or delegate or just say, no, I'm not adding value, not doing that at all. That really helped me. Meanwhile, like my kids like couldn't care less if I was at the orthodontist appointment or not, right? So, you add on top of it that you have these self-imposed pressures. And I think we all carry these things. The first thing that we try to do is help people get awareness of what it is that they are prone to do. And this is where data and software are phenomenally successful, because we can run the same assessment on hundreds of thousands of people. And because it's so validated and consistent, we can really help people understand, oh my gosh, I am prone to catastrophizing. Oh my gosh, I'm overly optimistic. No, there's no way. You're right. These are the reactions that I hear from people when they finish our assessment, or they're like, wow, I do tend to blame myself about everything. Now that is a recipe for, anxiety, guilt, shame, all these other things. And when we start to create awareness with people in a very objective, data-driven way, it creates a path for them to start to learn. Mm-hmm. The second thing I would say is that it's, beyond the awareness, empathy, the ability to relate to people, to be able to hear what other people are saying, and then, kind of understand how it feels to them and how it feels to you. Those are so fundamentally important first steps.
First of all, I could not agree more about empathy. We talk about this all the time, that if just the world had more empathy, we'd all be in such a better place. We have a hard time. We just, as a society, being that we're, just so polarized, and there is such a lack of empathy. But I got to drill down a little bit on kind of what you bring up, because it resonates with me so much as a woman. I mean, I went through this and I talk about it so much, raising 3 kids and all of that balance of never feeling like you do anything well enough. There's some stereotypes, right? Some of it's just real. Like there's women do this, right? So I think there's some very real things, but I think there's a bigger piece to this, which is really feeling like you have the confidence, I guess, to be able to let go. And I think that's where I've learned so much in the last few years, is to be able to say, and I think it applies for everyone, whether you're running a business or not, it's almost like you've got to take the risks of letting go and then seeing that you're okay, right? And having those consequences be okay. And then it gives you kind of this confidence to be able to do it more frequently. But you almost just have to start somewhere.
I think that's totally right. The science that underlies our ability to profile people, Marjorie, and then also for every individual, we do a lot more than just profile you. We construct a personalized program. And it's digital, it's interactive. If you need to talk to a therapist, we can navigate you to that. But a lot of people right now are struggling, but digital can be very helpful for them. And we can talk about that later. But what I was going to say is, what we do, our methodology is based on some years of study before we started the company that some psychologists were doing at the University of Pennsylvania, and they were identifying what are exactly the characteristics of resilient people and looking at whether those characteristics actually have a protective effect for things like mental illness, for chronic conditions. And they were finding that if they can develop these characteristics, these skills in people, and they are eminently learnable, they're not personality based, if you can develop these skills, they are really very protective against not just chronic conditions and mental health, but also, like dissatisfaction in life. So what are they, right? That, the question,
I was just going to ask you that.
What's the goal? What's the secret sauce here, right?
Right.
And the secret sauce, it turns out that there are 7 essential skills. And I'll tell you what they are.
I'm actually taking notes, just for the record. So that's a good sign.
And sometimes I rattle off 5 or 8, but there's really, sometimes I restate 1 or 2, so forgive me. So the first one is emotional intelligence or emotion control. is what I would call it. The ability to sort of understand and regulate your emotions appropriately. The second one is empathy. And, being empathetic is so critical. Being realistically optimistic or positive. You want to be positive, but you don't want to be positive, when the sky is falling in on you. You want to be realistically positive. You need to have self-efficacy or self-confidence. Next, you need to have the critical thinking or, problem-solving ability to know which problems you can tackle and which you can't. Sort of like, Patrick, a serenity prayer approach. Give me the wisdom to know which problems I can solve and which I cannot. And then you've got to have motivation, because life requires motivation. So basically, if we can teach people and help people get stronger on these, and, we all have a mix of them, right? You're good at this, but you're not so good at that. But if you can, and that's where the data is really good. Plus, you can look at a whole organization and say, wow, this is like, this is an empathetic, positive culture, but they're terrible at problem solving. Or you can say, this team of people in a call center are really good at controlling their emotions. They don't yell at the customers, but they're not empathetic. You can look at that, and then you can train each person at a time, but also the whole organization to be better. When you help every individual get more resilient, the whole organization is more successful.
I have like 100 things I want to say. I love these all independently. I counted 5, so I probably missed some, but I love the last one too about motivation, because none of it really matters if you're not motivated to work at it, right? And to make it all happen. Is that sort of your role of how you kind of define motivation?
Yeah, it's self-motivation. It's the ability to summon that motivation and keep going.
So, Jan, you've really emphasized the significance of these resiliency indicators and the impact of mental health on the productivity and the bottom line of a company. But this is still kind of foreign language to a lot of C-suites. Tell us how you kind of convince them to do something that's kind of new for them in terms of evaluating the value of, for example, what you do for them.
Most business leaders today understand that their near-term and longer-term success depends on their ability to transform their businesses. And it goes way beyond digitization, which has been a big theme for the last few years. Everything is massively transforming. And if they don't have that agile, adaptive workforce, people who get that it's okay that this is all changing, that people that are not starting their day upset, that all of their systems are changing all the time, the way they work, where they work, how they work. The first thing is that employers really understand now that the future of work lies in that agility and resilience of their workforce. And I think that what's starting to happen, because you've got the Great Resignation, you've got a lot coming out now about how people like their flexibility with hybrid work, and gig economy is just another portion of that. A lot of people are willing to work in high strain situations, high control or low control situations, but they don't want to do it 5 or 6 days a week, right? They're like, okay, I'll go do 3 12-hour shifts, but I'm not doing this 5 days a week. What employers realize is that the whole pact with the employee is shifting towards, we need you to be adaptive. And the employees are like, we need flexibility and we need purpose. And that's very, very different than the way things were 2 years ago, or especially 5 years ago.
So I spoke to global employees at Lockheed Martin a couple weeks ago, and the banner on the back of the Zoom was, Lockheed believes recovery is good for business. And I'm thinking, this is a big defense company. They had hundreds of employees from all of their different departments around the world who are openly in recovery on this webinar. And we were talking about how this kind of affinity program of people who are comfortable identifying themselves in recovery in the workplace allows them to be fighting for good EAPs for their fellows who might need support, making sure their plan administration, their TPA, is doing what they need to do in terms of access to addiction care and alcoholism care and all the rest. It blew my mind. And I thought to myself, wow, imagine if you could get these recovery community approaches to every business, because there's tons of people in every line of work that are in recovery, either from addiction or from a mental illness. There's this other group called Stability Network, which is those in recovery from bipolar. So I just think that there is an enormous opportunity for businesses, to your point about being purposeful, where they're not just looking at it for their employees, but they're also going to be advocates in the broader world. Just like today, companies have to have their carbon footprint. They've got to meet their obligations in other areas. It just seems to me there's so much beyond just the workplace where a company needs to help be an active citizen, if you will, in a world which is desperate for leadership.
No, I completely agree with you. I think there's a lot of power in addressing that. Like, for example, you have 40% of U.S. adults are reporting that they're struggling with mental health or substance abuse right now. And, the ability to allow us, corporations have tremendous power to stabilize and acknowledge that, to say, this is what it is, and we want to support everyone in taking action for this. People say to me all the time, well, are you mental health? And, I like to say that we think that a very important part of the continuum here, and where companies really need to help as well, is prevention. Because the power of helping people to both, be able to acknowledge that they have a problem and acknowledge that they need help and take action, all within the confines or without the stigma associated with it, is very impactful to large groups of people. We think of resilience really as primary prevention. It's like if we give everyone the awareness and the social connection and empathy to be able to self-manage and understand when things are not okay, we can really start to change things and prevent a lot of late-stage illness. So that's a very big part of what needs to happen.
So I think my view, and we've had a conversation about that to ultimately go upstream, we need our public education system to introduce neuroliteracy and to build it as a kind of public health awareness, much like we had the presidential physical fitness. We need mental skills early on in our lives to manage stress, cope, problem solve. It's almost like STEM education, which was really forced on the public education system by corporate America, because corporate America didn't feel like they had enough math, science, technology in the workforce. So they really got the system to change. They needed employees that were more facile in those areas of research. And so in the like way, I'm hoping that businesses kind of convince the public sector to do more early on to culturate people to this idea that this is about a strength building, right?
Right.
And then that way you're not in the business, meQuilibrium, of trying to do a kind of culture shock here. Like, let's introduce the way you should have gotten the rule book in life on how you can better manage things. Because even then, it's a tougher climb, I imagine, although people, I think you're right, are much more receptive in this particular environment we're living in today. But we definitely have to go even further upstream, because I agree with you. Prevention is the biggest answer to the tsunami that's already upon us, but only going to get worse given the indicators. And it's not really emphasized, unfortunately, as much as it needs to be in the public sphere. So that's where corporate leadership could really help in a broader way.
I always define myself as an optimist in the sense that, I'm not blindly optimistic, but, in that moment when you feel like, oh my gosh, something terrible, something about the way we've always lived is ending, and something real, there's a paradigm shift, or the earth, the end is near, kind of thing. I'm always the person in that crowd who says, well, there will be change, and it will ultimately be good. And that's just my outlook on life. The end is near, the future, it means also that the future is here. And the immediate future shows that business leaders now understand that mental health and emotional well-being, mental well-being is a prerequisite for success in their business, but also for managing attrition, turnover, morale, and just being able to compete in today's economy. The numbers are very clear for business leaders that when people are burned out and stressed out, their businesses suffer. They don't compete as well, and I think they're much more inclined to invest in this. And I think that's going to keep happening. The other force is that employees are demanding it, so it's kind of like a double whammy.
This is such a great conversation, and one that, we could have and go on and on for hours, because it is at the focal point. At SACHUB, we're a mental health education platform. So when you're talking about prevention, we don't do the direct care, but we do really believe in education as that first step in prevention. We have two different products. One is our mental health practitioner hub, where we actually upskill providers in using evidence-based practice. But our other one, Mental Health Ally, which is for everybody. Like, the reason why we do it is we want to help create informed consumers, so they know when they see something like a meQuilibrium, they understand that value that it can do for them, or even when they're going for treatment, right? It's so complicated to even know this space. Like, the common language is so confusing. And then, sometimes I laugh. Patrick and I get on these conversations all day, every day about, mental health being part of physical health. And, we wouldn't be having these conversations if people weren't so confused, right? Yesterday, we had a conversation with one of our large corporate employers about disease states and common side effects of mental health. And once we started going, unraveling it, it's like with every disease state, whether it's diabetes or hypertension or cancer, there's always mental health side effects, but we don't really think about it like that. I hope our listeners, and I hope all of us, whether, to your point about employers, whether it's primary care, specialty care, whatever it is, or however it resonates to someone, that we start thinking about it as one in holistic, that wellness is just as important as, like Patrick said, the physical fitness presidential award and all of these things. And resiliency, maybe listening to you makes me think that resiliency is the thread, if you will, that brings it all together, or maybe the foundation, or maybe it sits on top. I'm not really sure where, but it's the most critical piece to all of it. And people just, I think, need to understand that maybe it's a spectrum, and it isn't something that you're born with. It's something you work at. And maybe that's a more articulate way of trying to say what I was saying earlier, that you take risks and get more confidence to do. But really, it's about that work on it. So I think this was such an important topic. I'm grateful that you started this company, that you're doing this work, that you're collecting this research out there. I know it's making a difference now, but it's going to continue making a difference. And we need your work really now more than ever. And so I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. Thank you for sharing your pearls of wisdom and your humility that you bring to it. It's really encouraging.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marjorie. It's my pleasure. I feel very aligned with the work you guys are doing. Having worked in this field for 20 years now, I will say that we have this tendency to think, oh, it changes so hard, nothing ever changes. But, mental health has really gone from being a very siloed, acute, late stage, top of the pyramid solution to base of the pyramid, suitable for everyone. Patrick's talking about getting this into education, getting it into early education. And I think it's just going to keep going, and it's all for the good.
Well, thanks again, Jan. This is great. We look forward to a team effort. And this needs us to all work together, because the goals are to try to get a lot more advocacy and solutions together, because we're as much as we're trying to do, we're still only scratching the surface of the need out there. So always good to talk to you and collaborate with you. And again, like Marjorie said, thank you for the work you're doing, breaking down new layers of understanding in terms of how people can support their own mental health through learning these tools that meQuilibrium gives to them.
Hey, thanks for having me.
As always, thank you for listening to our podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, drop us a review.
If you haven't already, subscribe to our podcast for the latest episodes.
For the latest insights, check us out at psychhub.com.